Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes, and we have two of our interesting guests. From one guest, his name is Mr. Max, and he's from USA, and we have our another guest. I think many people know him from TAFFDS. His name is Abhilash from India. So hello
Hello,
everyone. How are you
everyone.
today? Yes.
Doing good.
I'm doing
Hello,
good,
How are
Mr.
Mr.
you?
Sharif. How are you?
Yes, yes, I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you. First, I request Mr. Max. Can I know that you are doing something interesting with many youth in a detention centers, and you have very good experience with them. Can you please introduce yourself and your work with our audience?
Yeah, so I went to college at Lynchburg University in Virginia, and that's where I first started studying criminology and started working in the juvenile detention centers, and really, you know, got a passion in working with these kids, and really saw them as future leaders and saw so much potential in them. Um, it wasn't until later I started that I moved to Colorado, and I actually just started teaching tennis and just kind of getting off topic. And then I probably a year or two later after moving here, I got back into it, and then I really started working in the juvenile detention centers more for the past few years. At multiple places and see multiple problems with and issues within them, to the point where it really doesn't seem that rehabilitation is the ultimate goal, but rather have the recidivism rates continue to rise and have the kids continue to come back. And so that really is where my ultimate what's the word I'm looking for? My ultimate goal is to help with lowering those recidivism rates, finding goals, finding different places for children to go, and different routes, different paths to take, as opposed to having to come back to prison and continue doing that.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent, Mr. Max. Mr. Ovilash, can you please introduce yourself? And I know that you have many involvement with different organizations. Besides that, you are a PhD scholar. So can you please share your views and everything with our audience?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Hello, Mr. Max. Hello, Mr. Sharif. It's a very good morning from India. And yeah, I'm Kaushik. I am a PhD research scholar from the Department of English, Cotton University, Guwahati, Assam, India. And yeah, what you rightly said, Mr. Sharif, I have been involving myself. I have been associating with organizations, and one of them is rightly so. It is TAFT, Transversal Agora for Future, and it is basically an non-government NGO located at Georgia, United States of America. And we are doing is in a way intending to be deliberations with future. We are basically our main intentions are that we will be fixing the future, and in doing that, we are in a way coping with various kind of strategies. In a way, we are coping with certain difficulties. We are in a way establishing ourselves to be something which deals with the future. And in doing that, at the very moment, at this very juncture, we are basically establishing ourselves in terms of conducting a few kind of engagement, in terms of various kinds of deliberations, negotiations. And now, like you know, Mr. Sharif, we have been conducting various interviews with certain futurist leaders, and you have been one of them, and you were also a part of that. And while doing so, our main aim is to, in a way, locate a point which will be helpful in terms of finding out certain futurist leaders, and we call them as future discussions. And we taft help in a way establishes that very sense of belonging, because what we think is that we are gateway into and out of Africa. And in doing that, our basic aim is to finalize and also channelize that young group of people, and also young group of specific identity people who are either way establishing themselves to be global figures, because there are many renowned personalities who we have already interviewed, and while doing so we have come to know and also making them heard. Our main goal is to make them hear, is to make them heard in this very global outlook. And while attempting to do that, we have been associating with other engagements as well, in terms of bringing out a magazine, in terms of conducting various conferences, and also in terms of establishing that very sense that there is something called TAFT, which is deliberating, which is in a way establishing some kind of associations. And besides that, we are also attributing that sense that there is a gateway which needs to be heard, and also there are some global figures which is very important in terms of making them seen, in terms of making them visible. Yeah, that's what we do basically.
Excellent. Mr. Max, both of you actually have a lot of engagement with the youth community. So today we're going to discuss about the youth empowerments and the youth improvements. And I know that you are doing something excellent last 10 years. We want to know more about your story, how your detention centers working right now. What is your roles as a mentors? How it works? What's the benefit for managing this kind of things?
Are you asking me? Sorry, Shu.
Yes.
So yeah, I think what he was saying earlier is really important to me, where identity is extremely important and not just be another number. Um, I've worked in a few different detention centers in Denver, and now it's actually getting a little harder to find work, not only because of the virus, but also because of a lot of places aren't really open to having a more therapeutic approach. They are more into having a more aggressive approach. They tend to want to keep things the way they are, even though they're not working. Because, like, I always consider comfort to be one of the most dangerous words in the dictionary. It seems like they're just very comfortable with what's going on, and you see it becoming a more systematic issue. You see it becoming an issue where, the guards are smuggling in drugs. There's molestation going on, and there's no cameras in there, even though there's money to put cameras in there. So for the same reasons they want cameras in there, or they don't want cameras in there, are the same reasons I want cameras in there. They have things to hide. And so I'm not, there's a few other people that will speak like me, and speaking like that actually is detrimental to your job. So being a counselor, being somebody as a guard in these detention centers, once you take a step back and start looking at the systematic issue that's at hand, you almost can understand why these people, why these parents, these families are set up to actually start smuggling drugs and start side businesses, to the point where rehabilitation is definitely not the main goal. And I always tend to go back to that, where rehabilitation should be the goal, bringing the recidivism rates down, and not, like you were saying earlier, making sure that they're not just another number, that they have an identity, that there's something there for them. And if you read the paper that I had sent to you as well, I think I really do consider them future leaders in this country, especially not only because they have to learn things through trial and error more than anybody else, but I mean, even something as specific as smartphones. You see kids stuck on their smartphones, their nose stuck in it, and kind of controls them. They don't have smartphones. And so they actually have that advantage of growing up and having a much better identity and a much better path to go through, or to go down, when they're not, on social media all day or doing certain things like that. And I truly believe that there's so much there that is not being... sorry for lost words. That's just not being. They're not. They're not. We're not seeing their full potential, for sure. And it continues to get worse, and it goes back to the identity issue, where they start to have more of a negative identity of themselves, and they start to go down this path where they almost prefer to be back in prison. It's almost even when they're out, their life might be set up where it is better to be in prison. So that's why you always have to take a step back and look at the systematic issue and look at the bigger issues as opposed to just the small issues all at once. And
Mhm.
my apologies. I I was
Okay,
gonna
okay.
have things more prepared for tomorrow, so I apologize for the time zone difference and
Okay, okay. No problem. No
confusion for
problem.
the
No
time.
problem. No problem. Thank you for joining today. Mr. Abhilash, as you have a lot of engagement with Asia, especially South Asia, as well as African community, and with your TAFFDs and some of your initiative, you are engaged with academia and engaged with the youth community. How you engage with this youth community and how you getting benefits? What your objective? How do you think about that? Yeah.
Well, youth is the future of our entire global outlook,
Hmm.
isn't it? Whatever we do are in a way basically associated with some kind of dealings, in the sense that it will help you establish, it will also help the entire goal being reached. Because TAFT as an organization, or TAFT as a name, as a global name at the very moment, is being doing things which is in a way associating themselves to be something doing in terms of greater outlook. And to do that, there has to be certain kind of initiative, and to do that there has to be certain kind of trend going on, and there has to be some attributes which are being considered and also which are being taken into account in terms of being positively seen, in terms of attributing themselves to be very important in this broader outlook. And while we talk about the youth and the present day world, youth has been, or youth rather, is that specific angle which needs to be heard. And that's what we do, because there are many global figures, there are many global outlook. The other day I was conducting an interview with an Irish very young scientist. He is 19 years old and his name is Fionn Ferreira. And that fellow, that young guy, has done numerous works, has done a lot of great things which really are not being seen, which really are not being heard. And to do that there has to be some kind of initiative, and to do that there has to be some kind of steps taken to be attributing them, to be helping them. And while doing that, we are in a way bringing them to focus that whatever they are doing, they are of greater importance. Whatever they are doing, they are of great paramount importance. And to do that, there has to be a specific attribute. There has to be the ramifications which are to be taken into account. And taking the example of Fionn Ferreira, what I am trying to here illustrate is the fact that the younger generations are pretty much important in terms of being given that space, because space is very important. Whatever you do, there has to be a space, be it mental space, be it physical space, be it psychological space, but then that space is very important. And while giving them that specific space, it will help them that very establishment of their mindset, because it is, after all, it is identity, after all it is being seen, after all it is being visualized, that we all hanker after. And when, and to say that what I have gained, what I have benefited from all those stuffs, all those engagement, is the fact that I can today say that I have changed the outlook. I have in a way become open to all sorts of possibilities in terms of visualizing people, in terms of understanding people, in terms of getting to know how a person can be, what can be his views, or what can be her ideas, what can be the associations, what can be the ramifications. There is a whole lot of possibilities in today's world. And youth is that specific angle, youth is that specific attribute which is pretty much important by drawing that connecting link, because youth is that link which will draw the global world closer. Because we all are now at this very point, we are in three different countries, but then we are associating ourselves at this very point. This is technology which is making us link, which is in a way connecting us. And to be seen, to be heard, to be visualized, there has to be some kind of ramifications, which I am greatly stressing on. And to do that, my basic identity, or the basic identity of the younger generations in this global world, is of paramount importance. because there are many people, be it in Africa, be it in America, be it in other parts of the world, who are doing tremendous work in terms of colliding with the greater outlook, and in also in terms of the general attribute, because there has to be some kind of goals associated. Whatever we do, there is a goal, there is always a set target, there is always a destination which is to be reached. And while doing so, we just plan, we just hope that it is being reached, it is to be reached at any cost. That's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huilash. Mr. Max, you are working with some of the area where we have to know more. And second things, Ovilash come up with the one of the interesting point, setting goal. So how your detention centers and this kind of things for youth and these peoples, how you set goal for them, how it works, what your organizational goal.
Are you talking about for me personally or for the detention centers that I work
Detentions,
for?
yeah, detention centers and personal points you can share with us.
So yeah, I think like I was touching on earlier, one of the biggest issues is it seems that most of the people working there, their main goal is to feed their families, which of course you can't blame them for, but at the same time, it's extremely detrimental to the rehabilitation process of these children because the children aren't coming first. It's how can they get, their 40-hour job, get home, take care of their family, and just go through this process. And it really loses that emotional or therapeutic process that can help with these, as I like to call future leaders, because they really don't. I mean, it depends what state you're in. Like I said, I went to college in Virginia, and that was way different. I mean, you could be any age and be in solitary confinement, and that we have many studies done to show how awful that can be to the mind, but especially to a kid. At least they don't do that in Colorado, where I am right now. But when I was in Virginia, they did have kids in solitary confinement for 23 out of 24 hours. So when talking about a goal, it didn't seem to be on a right track. And that's what my main goal when working in these detention centers are, when writing these papers, when talking to management, when reaching out through social media, talking to other people about it, hypothetical situations to see how other people feel about these situations. And a lot of it isn't exposed, unfortunately. And so as far as their goal, I don't see much of one. And that tends to be one of the biggest problems for me, is that there isn't a goal, which should be to, I've seen guards actually say, "Hey, it's so nice to see you again," because you just came back into prison. It's not nice. It's not like you saw them at a bar or a bowling alley. It's not nice to see them again. And so it's kind of like this, there's this fine line that tends to be crossed constantly. So yeah, it's
One of the interesting things I want to know, like why you choose this career path, what is the motivation behind that, and can you share your personal story with our audience?
yeah. So my one of the things that personally gets me is growing up white and middle class and in New York. That made a huge difference because when I was in high school, I did get felonies. I would get in trouble for doing really stupid, immature stuff. And I see that as growing up as a kid. Fortunately, because of the situation I was in and because of the country we grow up in America, being white and middle class actually will give you a second chance. So working with these kids now, you don't see many kids in that situation. And not only that, you see the parents coming in, if they do have parents, and you'll see serious drug issues. You'll see just endless amounts of issues that come with these parents, or if they do have parents to begin with, or if they're living by themselves, or and it's something I would take for granted, and learned once I started working and interning in Virginia, and then coming here and working. So that definitely was my ultimate motivation for sticking with this and continuing working as a guard or counselor, or coach. They change the names based on where you're working. Um, but that definitely was my ultimate motivation. The idea that I did learn a lot from those mistakes, but I had the chance to learn. I had that second chance, while most don't.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Mr. Abhilash. Uh, Basically, you are educated, and you have a engagement with the research and different kind of world class organizations. My question is that what you learned from the different organizations, and what do you want to say about the youth contribution from your organizational perspective?
Well, talking at a personal level, my basic learning or my basic outcome at this very juncture is the fact that I have learned to express myself. That is my basic, in a way, motivation. Without being ashamed of anything, without being, in a way, confining myself to a space which is not being seen. Whatever you do, express yourself. And that is what I would love to say to the entire younger generation. Because without being expressive, without expressing yourselves, you are not going to get anything at this very point. Because expression is the key, be it in any organization, be it in any kind of personal communication, interconnections. There has to be that basic expression at a personal level. And then when you talk about the group attributes, when you talk about the group associations, communication becomes very important. There has to be proper communication. If you are talking about the attainment of a goal, if you are establishing yourself to be attaining a specific target, then there has to be specific goal, which I already talked about. And to reach that goal, another important factor is communication. You have to communicate at a proper specific level, and those communications can be of various types. There can be top down, there can be bottom up, but then there has to be proper communication. Whatever you do, you have to make things clear in terms of being giving a specific guideline, in terms of being associating yourself to be someone who knows how to deal with things, who knows how to establish that sense of rapport, that sense of connections with the various other global outlook. And when you talk about youth, I have already told youth, what I see is the future, which we everyone do, which we everyone in a way associate ourselves with. And youth at this very point needs that specific space which I am talking about. It's not that they don't have that space, it's not that they are always relegated, but then that expression will come to the forefront even better whenever we give them that space, whenever we give them that sense of doing things. Because we know we all can do wonders if we are given that responsibility, if we are given that sense of attainment that you can do it and you will have to do it. And TAFT does that. TAFT is something which will allow you to express yourself no matter what, irrespective of the result. And that sense is what that drives me. It motivates me to go ahead in terms of expressing yourselves without being hindered by the other external factors, without being attributed to a position of relegations. And that is pretty important. That is what I think is pretty much essential in this global world. Yeah, that's all I have to say about this.
Mhm, excellent, Mr. Marx. Like, I want to know, like, what type of student naturally you get in your centers, and do you follow any kind of curriculums, any kind of activities for this youth? And is there any opportunity this youth in the future they get involved with the with their national ecosystems? What the procedure?
So I just wanted to add to that last thing real quick as well. Yes, communication, of course, is extremely important, and I think one of the things that is really underestimated is the nonverbal communication, how far that goes, especially working with juvenile detention centers. So there would be a lot of situations where, when speaking about curriculums, within the juvenile detention centers, I would actually get in trouble for not crossing my arms and having my back up against the wall, having that aggressive stance. So they would think I'm putting myself in more danger as a result of that. They would look at it as more of a vulnerable position. But the reality was, I looked at it as I actually was safer as a result. I was one of the only people I didn't see get punched in the face because of it. So they would think, if I took a knee while they stood above me, that was really dangerous for me. But as a result, they would actually open up and start communicating more, showing their emotions more, expressing themselves more, and actually opening up without me even prompting anything. They would come to me and actually talk to me as as somebody that they could follow, or somebody that they could take advice from, and feel comfortable talking to. So with regard to your question, you were asking how they're rehabilitated and get back into the economy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and so I had come up with a program because I've done a lot of freelancing on my own. I'd started 2 different companies, just small companies working with different warehouse distribution plants, and I would go through eBay, Amazon, things like that. And so I'd actually created a program where if they are released from prison and they don't have anywhere to go, they don't have any money, they barely have anything, you can actually get started with no upfront costs by picking up garbage, going to a library, going to the computer, actually starting an account, and actually shipping items from there, and actually starting with, like I said, no upfront costs. And so that's one of the main things that I try to implement when going into different detention centers and working with the kids like that, and having them be able to learn how to use eBay really as the main source. Like I always say, they could pick up garbage and sell it. One man's trash is another man's gold. And you see it all the time now, where there's just so much stuff that people can pick up, and people don't really go to the library anymore, right? And that is a reason to go, because the computer's there, because they have free Wi-Fi. And so that's one of the ways that I like to implement something where they can be rehabilitated and function properly back within society once released from prison, while looking for another job, because it could only be a few days before they decide to do something illegal again. That'll put them right back into prison, because they're forced to, because they're hungry.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Abhilash, like, what do you think? How actually in these COVID situations we should train the youth community? Let's say I want to share the Malaysian things. Let's say Malaysian governments, they are taking a lot of initiative to improve the skills and improve the knowledge, how they cope up with these situations. They are trying to helping the youth community to getting more jobs in the national economy. Even in between few months, they have more than 5% unemployment rate. But as they're taking a lot of initiative from the government side, with their skills, with their corporate cultures, with their small medium enterprise initiative, with the e-commerce and other things, they are trying to overcome from this situation. From India, or you are working with Africans nations, what the initiative you are observing? Can you share some things that uh, what the situation in India, and how government taking initiative, or what the unemployment situation right now for the youth?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes. And whatever your Malaysian government is doing at the moment, it's really commendable. Because, as I already said, the youth has to be given some kind of establishment, has to be given some kind of proper attainment. And while doing that, if we talk about the Indian condition, we are now greatly coping with that. We are greatly coping with this situation of the standstill because we already know COVID-19 in a way has made the situation come to a halt because we human beings have always associated ourselves with progress. But now, because of this pandemic, the word progress has lost all its meaning. The word progress has, in a way, lost its sense of that calm, that sense of attainment, that sense of meaning. And to bring it again and to diversify ourselves from that certain attribute of a standstill, we are to come back to normalcy. We are to bring back that so-called normal, which we are already having at this very point. And to talking about the youth, talking about the general level of employment, we can greatly visualize various small scale setups. This is what is happening at this very point because people are now looking for alternatives. People are now looking for some kind of other options because the previous working establishments, the previous working organizations are no longer feasible at this very point, are no longer in a way helpful at this very juncture. And to bring in some kind of innovations and to bring in some kind of newness, the so-called newness, we will have to talk about other alternatives. And while doing so, there has to be collaborative approach. This is what I think. Because competitive mindset at this very point can be very detrimental, can be very harmful. Because we are not competing with anyone. No youth is competing with any other individual. It is about self-expression. It is about self-establishment. Because after all, there has to be food. Without food and shelter, human beings are of no specific attainment. Human beings will go nowhere. There has to be that proper belonging sense. There has to be that establishment, which I am talking about. And collaborative approach can really help a great deal in this regard because whenever we collaborate, whenever we get ourselves associated with any other thing, any other organizations, good things are bound to come, good things are bound to happen. And we have already seen this very state, this very picture at Taft, because Taft has been establishing itself to be involving in some kind of activities which will make the young generations visible, which will make the young generations public. And to do that, we have been trying our level best to be associating ourselves in this very global forum. And Indian context, if you talk about the effects of some kind of detriments which are being experienced by all of us at this very point. We are nearing 1 lakh cases every single day at this very point, which is really staggering in terms of fact. If we consider the numerical data, every single day we are nearing 1 lakh cases. And this is an absolute staggering figure for a country like India, because India is not yet a developed country. It is still developing. We have not yet attained the tag of a developed country. It is a developing country at this very point. And for a developing country like India to be experiencing 1 lakh positive cases every single day is absolutely staggering in terms of numerical data, in terms of figure and fact. And to combat with that and to cope with that and to combat that specific issue, there are steps, there are proper guidelines which are to be followed and which are being followed at this very point. And in terms of setup, in terms of small scale setup, which I already told, they are of paramount importance. And what is the basic outcome? If we talk about the basic outcome of small scale output, we can greatly see the fact that it will help native industries or native small scale developers to come to the forefront. Because at this very point, we are not, we, or rather we cannot think of collaborating with any other country. Like we, if we talk about the greater countries in terms of the growth development rate, in terms of the GDP, like China or America or any other developed countries, at this very juncture, the proper collaboration or the import and export business is at a standstill. We just cannot hope to be having that same flow in terms of trade flow, in terms of the global chain system, in terms of the productive rate. There has to be some kind of other alternatives, because at this very point we are not having any kind of connections. And this is what I think as a positive state. This is what I think as a positive chance for the native and for the small scale developers to come to the forefront, because there has to be living going on, there has to be some kind of global associations going on. And to do that, if you can establish yourself to be permanent figures, to be someone who is doing something in terms of making yourself seen, it is the step to the future. It has to be done. And to do that, no matter what it takes, no matter how hard it can appear at the very outset, because doing something or doing a proper attribute at the initial stages can be really tough, can be really difficult in terms of establishing. But then once you are set, once you are getting the flow of the things, it can really do wonders for you. It can really establish yourself, and also it will help you feed your family, which Mr. Max is stressing on feeding. That is also very important, which I am talking about, because food, health, and shelter, those three, since time immemorial, are of paramount importance for human survival. Yeah, that's all.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent. Mr. Max, we want to know more about US situation right now. What's the US youth situation right now, at least your area? What do you want to share about the youth conditions in the job markets as well as in the COVID situation? What the government initiative? We know you have elections in November, but can you share some views with us?
With regard to the detention centers or just overall youth and
You can focus on your detention center.
yeah, so I'm actually not as informed when it
Mhm.
comes to the youth and how they're being affected by the economy right now. But I do know, like what he was saying earlier about just when it comes to the adults that are working there, it really comes down to feeding their family. And so, like you were saying earlier, there is so much potential and so much that can be done. But first things need to be done, and that's getting a system that's set up where it's proper, it's functioning, and it's not just like when it comes to staff members, it's constantly people coming and going as if it is just like a high school job or something. And so there is no consistency, and so there's nothing there for the kids. Uh, and when it comes to helping them rehabilitate and get out. Um, but I apologize. I wouldn't know enough about the youth in general and how they're being affected by COVID-19,
Mhm.
other than within the system. And like I was saying earlier, I was having issues with these different detention centers. So it has been a few months since I have been working at one. The last place I had worked in, I had gotten in a lot of trouble for because I wanted to stop 5-on-5 basketball games because it was around February, March, right when COVID started really hitting, and they weren't taking it seriously at all. Um, and like I was talking about earlier about the word comfort, they just were very comfortable. They were worrying about their own families, they were worrying about their own jobs, they didn't want to lose their jobs. And so the kids in the detention centers definitely did not come first. And that was definitely a big part of that.
Mhm, mhm. Excellent. There is a question from audience. I want to take these questions. Humaira Tanzila, she said, "Hello everyone, greetings from Malaysia." Onika, I think she is observing your sessions. Noor Fazrin, she has a questions. Hello, thanks for joining this session. It is an interesting topic, but nowadays we observe many of them are not in a right track. What steps need to follow for their developments? I think youth development. Thank you. So yeah, I want to start with Abhilash, then I
Avinash.
Max. Abhilash, then Max can give this answer. Yeah,
Yeah,
Abhilash.
sure. I, I think what needs to be done is give them proper counseling sessions that help a great deal. If you give them some kind of proper counseling sessions, or proper giving them some kind of more motivational strikers, motivational attributes, which will help them grow, which will help them establish themselves, which will help them express themselves. Because the modern day world is a pretty competitive world. There is competition going on every single day in every single aspect. And while doing that, there has to be proper engagement. And when I talk about engagement, I mean both the personal and the public engagement. If you are to develop yourself at a personal level, there has to be confidence. There has to be confidence which will rise you up. There has to be your self confidence which will prove to be very pivotal in this regard, which will prove to be of paramount importance in this specific regard. And while doing that, there are pretty much steps being already taken, and also there are steps which are on the way in the sense that they will be implemented very soon. And while doing this, counseling sessions will help a great deal. Not only counseling sessions, there has to be some kind of motivational talks associated with it. As I already told, if you are guiding someone in the right path, if you are guiding an individual to be doing what he or she is inclined towards doing, you will do wonders. Those tips can be of great help in the sense that they will help them grow, and at the same time, they will also help them feel confident about what they are doing or feel attributes of something which they need to do. They will get to know the ramifications associated. They will get to know the intricacies which are of paramount importance, which are pretty difficult at times, but then they are to be considered. They are to be taken into account. And to do that, whatever we do in this current world is very significant, is very important. And when we talk about the global youth, there has to be a proper platform or the space which I am already stressing on. That space is very, very, very important because that space will not only help you express yourselves, but also at the same time it will help you do something which you are inclined towards doing. Because after all, it all boils down to your self-interest. We do things based on our interest. Well, whenever a youth is forced to do certain things, whenever a young individual is forced to do things which he or she is not interested in doing, you cannot expect a positive result. That's for sure.
Mhm.
There can be the situation that he or she will do things based on your persuasion, but then there has to be some kind of result. And you cannot expect that whenever you are forcing someone to do things which he or she is not interested in doing. And that thing is to be understood by the elder generation, by the parents and the guardians, because they are the ones who will be guiding them. The counseling sessions, the other external organizations will come second. They are now at this very point at a relegated state. What I am focusing on is the fact that there has to be self persuasion at a personal level, and also there has to be the right guidance being given from the family, from the parents and the guardians. After that, whenever they are being given the exposure, they will get acclimatized. First of all, they will also get accustomed to the external environment, the external atmosphere. And while doing so, there will be a collaborative approach. What I want to say is the fact that if we think we rather than I, if we think at a cooperative level rather than at a personal level, things will change. Things will do wonders for the youth. And I really hope that there is a positive outlook, there is a positive approach being taken, which will help them and also which will help the establishment of that sense of youth community. That's all I have to say.
Mhm. Excellent. Mr. Max, what do you want to share? What type of initiative we can take?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Abhilash on that. The reintegration process is always extremely difficult, for sure, especially when uh, talking about all the different factors, especially when it comes to the family, when it comes to the socioeconomic status, when it comes to the race, when it comes to where they live. And there's so many different issues that they could inevitably just be sent right back to prison. And so having different programs, having certain people there that are ready for a next step to get you further away from putting you back into prison should be the number one goal into uh, having a more proper process of rehabilitating these kids and making sure they don't come back. Um, but yeah, I think there needs to be a more standard idea when it comes to uh, the reintegration process and how they work better with society once they get back out there. Um, and that's why I usually will talk about them. A lot of their training processes will be, I'll call them prisoners in training, because they really don't have any other option because they're not taught to be a proper citizen. They're really taught to be more aggressive, or taught to be, take that forward stance and not really have two ears and one mouth, or listen and try to work amongst the society and try to control it instead. And that's always inevitably going to be bad. And tends to send them right back to that awful situation that they started in, and it's just turns into a smaller and smaller and smaller circle that they keep going in. And it tends to start with the exterior, or rather, like I was saying, the reintegration process when they leave, who they have to help them. And there needs to be a bigger focus on that. Absolutely.
Excellent. Mr. Abhilash, my questions to you, like, as for the COVID, right now we have a lot of challenging situation, right? Let's say we healthcare is a major challenging issues right now. Second things, economy right now in a challenging moment for every countries. For economic, as economy go for the challenging situations, this employment situations also not in good in many countries. What's the initiative we can take right now for manage these healthcare systems, as well as for this youth employment, creating more youth employment opportunity? What your advice? What's your guideline, Mr. Ohilash?
Whenever we, yeah, whenever we talk about the strategies to cope with COVID, I think, to be absolutely honest, we don't have anything as such. That this is the strategy which we have to employ when it comes to coping with COVID, because it is a global virus which is harming us, which is making life come to a standstill, which is shattering our lives at this very point. But then there are things happening. We will have to take into account of the positive things happening. And in terms of positive things, there are hospitals being built in terms of acclimatizing the situation, or in terms of giving them that sense of measuring things. The new hospitals, the new healthcare centers, the new medical units will do wonders. And I'm really hopeful of that. And taking my own state into account, Assam, there has been tremendous developments in terms of new improvements. There are new special hospitals being built. There are new medical units which have come up. And in terms of employment, a lot of young boys and girls have been given employment opportunities in the medical units, in terms of taking care of the billing department, in terms of taking care of the small insurgencies unit, and in taking that situation into account, it is a really positive sign, because after all, we do things which are required to be done, which will in a way help you to be doing things at a proper manner. And this will, in a way, help things get better, if not properly cured, because we don't know when it will be cured. We don't know when will this global pandemic come to an end. And we just can hope that things will be better very soon. And for a developed country like America or China, it might seem easier, but for a developing country like India, it is still very difficult. It is still very alarming, in the sense that there is a dark, looming picture still prevailing. A dark picture is still looming large, because we don't have that sense of confidence. We don't have that sense of grip. And that grip is very interesting. And that grip is very important as well, because it will help you to be giving that sense of confidence that, okay, fine, we are doing this thing at this very point, and this is what we require at this very juncture. And it is the specific outlook which we have been looking for, because that outlook will provide the sense of belonging. That outlook will provide that medical help which is required, because there are deaths, and death is the ultimate reality. We all know about that, which we all fear. We all fear death, no matter how confident we can be, how in a way bold we can be, but then death is feared by all, and we don't want death. Nobody wants to die, but then there are deaths going on every single day. People are dying like cats and dogs. We have been on the same plane like the animals. Not that animals should die, but then human beings are considered to be the most sophisticated animal, and that sophisticated animal should live for the world to progress. And at this very point, there are deaths, there are positive cases every single day, which is alarming and is staggering as well. But then there are steps being taken in terms of new hospitals being built, in terms of medical setups, in terms of employment opportunities being given to the youth by making them join certain departments, by making them join certain units. And I'm pretty much hopeful that things will be better very, very, very soon.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Max, what's the initiative we can take for the futures? What your advice? What's your guidelines for the youth?
For helping them, I think one of the main things, especially in America and these detention centers, is being innovative. And not only that, but also not necessarily having to listen to somebody at a higher position in order to come up with an innovative idea. I think anybody can come up with certain ideas, can have a different mindset. Everybody thinks differently, and you never know who's going to come up with the next great idea. So that's why I always say 2 ears and one mouth is so important. And so when speaking of the detention centers, a lot of the times it really is a hierarchy thing where they're really not going to listen to you if you are in a high enough position, regardless of what the idea is or what the concept is. And that's when I talk about the word comfort and how dangerous it is, because a lot of people are getting too comfortable because they don't want to deal with all the issues that are at hand and continue to be thrown at them and just kind of look the other way. And I truly believe one of the best ways of helping that is listening to anybody who has different ideas and not being insulted, especially if you bring up certain concepts or ideas to helping.
Mhm.
And I
Excellent.
yes.
Hmm. Mr. Abhilash, as you are a researcher, do you have any research and publications on youth developments, or what do you think? What type of, because World Talent Economy Forums, Asia Research and Development Institutes, Al Noor Academy, Sarhadia Barhat, we are working together. We do more focus on research. We do more focus on training and developments. So both of you are expert. Definitely in the future, we're going to invite you for more policy discussions, more on the developments and other things. So, what your advice for developing research and how actually research can help youth community?
Oh yes, I do have publications on youth development, on youth employment, on youth expressions, and those are pretty much integral. Those are pretty much important in terms of providing that space to the youth in general. Because what I believe, youth is that building block which will help you grow, which will help the entire nation grow. And to do that, there has to be a specific mindset involved at the initial level. At the very outset, there has to be that push, because a young boy or a young girl has to be pushed. If you push, if you give that trust to be expressing themselves, there can be wonders. And I have been stressing on this point. All you need to do is that provide them with that specific space, provide them with that specific outlook which is required. And whenever we talk about research, I do believe that research has a very significant event. It is an event actually, because there is enormous possibilities in the world of research. It is an event which needs to be explored. At this very point, whatever we are doing, we are sticking to one specific topic. We all do. Whenever we research, whenever we carry out our specific outlook, whenever we carry out our specific topic, there is the focus on sole attribute of that single topic. But then research is an event which needs to be explored if you are thinking of some broader outcome. If you are considering yourself to be a researcher, if you are considering yourself to be someone engaged in the field of research, there has to be that broader outlook which is of paramount importance in terms of providing with the space, and also in terms of gaining the result. Because after all, there is the association of result which is very important. After all, there has to be the attainment of goal. There has to be the attainment of some kind of success, because we all hanker after success. We don't do things for failure. We fear failure, although we fail. If we consider the failure to be a failure, it can act you in a detrimental manner. But if we consider the failures to be the learning curves, to be that building block which will help you grow, which will help you establish, there can be wonders, there can be ultimate success which you aspire, which we all hanker after. And research is that field which needs to be explored. There are many good researchers across the globe. There are many great people who have done tremendous works in terms of research, in terms of innovations, in terms of ideas, in terms of expressing themselves to be someone who are known, who are heard, who are involved. But then this is a wide field which can be explored again and again and again and again. There are topics which are reread, which are reused, which are recycled, and those topics are of vital importance whenever we talk about research, because we are researching, we are searching, and we are researching. It is research. There has to be going back. There has to be the attempt to go back. And while going back, we'll find again and again, we'll find new ideas. There will be some kind of challenges, no doubt about that. There will be some hurdles which will need to overcome, but then there will be success at last, because it is research. Whenever we go back, whenever we dig deep into this specific field, there will be positive results. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take a audience response. Betty, uh, uh, thank you, Max. I agree with you about listening to someone in higher position, because those in such position tend towards bettering themselves and going higher than they are. Listening to them then is applying such nights. You need to begin your foundations to uplifting one who is already uplifted. So what do you want to say, that how we can uplift it, the society, like as you are working with the many different kind of peoples, what your advice, how we can uplift this kind of people in the main extreme activities?
As far as making it more effective, or
Yes, yes.
yeah, I think just being open, just not have feeling that threat of someone losing their job. And that, when I talk about the hierarchy, especially with juvenile detention centers, and how a lot of these guards and people who work there, they tend to really be fighting to keep their job. And so, like we've been touching on many times, where the there's so many different factors that play in that don't make sure the kids come first. It's keeping their job first, and that's why I go back to the word comfort. When you have somebody at a higher position, they want to stay comfortable. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to be questioned, because it's gonna only risk them losing, or risk their job, or keeping their position anymore. So as far as helping with it, I mean, just giving some kind of protections where somebody doesn't have to lose their job, or doesn't have to feel threatened if presented with certain ideas, and actually uh, if it actually is promoted, if people are actually positive about coming up with new ideas, instead of creating an atmosphere where people, I'm one of the only people that will actually lose a job over bringing up certain ideas like that, while a lot of people learn not to bring up certain situations. Even if they think it's right, they have to think about, well, I'm possibly going to lose my job for speaking out. And so how to create an atmosphere where you don't feel that so much, where you feel okay with coming up with innovative ideas, especially with a time like now with COVID-19 and things constantly changing. And I think that's a big part. And that's why I always say 2 ears and 1 mouth. I think it's so important. And just listening twice as hard as speaking. And being as objective as possible,
Mhm. Excellent.
not worrying about titles.
Excellent, excellent. Actually, we come up with the two different views. Let's say you are from the detention centers, and most of the cases, like our main society, maybe we do not know much about that. On the other hand, Abhilash has a very good integrations with the global community for the youth development in Africa as well as in Asia. And most important part is that today's discussion we come up with some of the very interesting idea how actually youth get guidelines, youth get opportunity, and what's the things we can do for the youth community. This is the ultimately objective for World Talent Economy Forums, and that's why we are trying to connect around the world. We are trying to getting involved with the people as much as possible, and ultimately our objective is that we want to create a better world, we want to create a better community, we want to create a better ecosystems. So for that particular issues we need all of your helps, we need all of your collaborations, we need all of your partnerships, and we want to learn more, we want to work together more. So this is our objective. So that is the ultimately the way that World Talent Economy Forums we are working. Previously we do a lot of academy, conference, summit, many of the innovative activities and the academic activities. So hopefully with your innovative guidelines we can do more, and 2021 we will do more bigger event and activities. Definitely is based on COVID and other situations. So thank you for your valuable contribution for today. And definitely Asia Research and Development Institute and Al Noor Academy Sarhadia Barhad and World Talent Economy Forum, we want to invite more talent people like you. Those who are interested, you can communicate with us, as well as you can check our World Talent Economy Forum YouTube channel, WTEF Forum YouTube channel, and subscribe it. By this way, hopefully we can connect it. And we have our Facebook groups, we have our web, so we get connecting together. Thank you for today's valuable times. What's the concluding remarks for today? I want to ask Mr. Abhilash, then I request concluding remarks from Mr. Max.
Well, yeah, I would like to end by saying the youth, the entire younger communities in general, that express yourselves. Until and unless you don't express yourselves, you cannot expect positive results. And once you start expressing yourself, and whenever I use the word express, I'm not indicating towards expressing yourself at a larger scale. Start step by step, because small things are the building blocks which will help you achieve bigger goals. Start speaking, start doing something, start expressing your views, start giving your opinions, and it will be really helpful when it comes to attaining the larger goal. And in terms of expressing yourself, there can be hindrances, there can be hurdles which will need to overcome, and that specific mindset is of paramount importance. Whenever you think of doing something, do it. Whenever you think of saying something, say it. Whenever you are interested in visualizing a picture which might seem difficult, but then visualize it, frame it in your mind, and then you can hope for a positive result. Because at a personal level, by involving myself with various organizations, I have learned to express myself, I have learned to, in a way, connect to various global personalities who are the basic step when it comes to building the future. And you can be that framework, you can be that path which is of paramount importance. And I thank you, Mr. Sharif, for this wonderful engagement, for your wonderful deliberations, for your wonderful ideas. And I really hope that in the future as well, we will be having such engaging talks. Thank you, Mr. Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Abhilash. There is one question, last questions I just want to take. Mr. Max, if you want, you can give this answer, but it is audience questions. That's why Mohammad Shoail Rana, he said that what is the most common factor in empowering youth through sports technology? And Mr. Max, please give your concluding remarks for today.
I'm not sure exactly what he means by sports technology, but I do have an answer through sports. Absolutely. I definitely teach tennis, basketball, soccer, and a few other sports, but especially basketball and tennis. I think tennis is one of the more interesting things because it seems to be, especially in kids who are in prison, tend to think it's more of a higher class sport. that they're just don't have access to. And so when I finally can get them out there to play, I haven't really run into one kid that hasn't loved it, that hasn't enjoyed it, and hasn't really taken it to the next level or wanted to take it to the next level. And I like using sports, using analogies through sports as well, where life lessons are, especially when talking about tennis or basketball, guarding your alley, guarding the net, and just talking about relating it to everyday life experiences. So I think sports are extremely important when it comes to not only teaching life lessons, but also relating to these kids. Absolutely. Especially when speaking about expression and their emotion and really getting a lot out of them and getting their full potential out.
Okay. Thank you for joining today's sessions. This is actually excellent sessions, and hopefully in the futures we're going to invite you more. So all of your support is very important for World Talent Economy Forums. Thank you for your valuable time, and thank you for your valuable support.
And thank you for everything you're doing, Ms. Sharif, as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I hopefully we can speak again. And I apologize for the confusion when
no
it
problem.
came to the time. It won't happen again, I promise.
Okay. Thank you, Abhilash, and thank you, Mr. Max.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sharif. Much appreciated, young man.
Bye. Take
care.
Take it easy.
Bye. Yes.
Bye-bye.